This Pecha Kucha will talk about photography. I will cover 3 key people and events in history that helped to define modern photography. After that, I will entertain you with some ornamented fonts and how to use them. I hope you enjoy this, so sit back, relax, and enjoy the ride. The daguerreotype process was the first publicly available photographic process. It was prominent during the 1840s and 1850s, and unfortunately was superseded by less expensive methods within a period of about 20 years. This process was invented by Louis-Jacques Monde Daguerre. Mr. Daguerre was an artist and inventor who partnered with Charles Burton to create a theater scene called a diorama that used a camera obscura to manipulate the illumination of light. Nicephore Niepce would use this camera obscura along with his heliographic process to create actual images for the public. To make the image, a daguerreotypist would polish a sheet of silver-plated copper to a mirror finish, treat it with fumes that made its surface light-sensitive, expose it in a camera for as long as it was judged to be necessary, which could be as little as a few seconds for brightly sunlit subjects, or much longer with less intense lighting. They then make the resulting latent image on it visible by fuming it with mercury vapor, remove its sensitivity to light by liquid chemical treatment, rinse and dry it, then seal the easily marred result behind glass in a protective enclosure. Both the image you see here of Abraham Lincoln and the first picture of Mr. Daguerre are examples of his daguerreotypes. Edward Muybridge was born Edward James Muggeridge and was an English photographer important for his pioneering work in the photographic studies of motion and early work in motion picture projection. He adopted the first name Edward as an original Anglo-Saxon form of Edward and the surname Muybridge, believing it to be similarly archaic. In June 1878, Muybridge created a sequential series of photographs with a battery of 12 cameras along the racetrack at Stanford's Palo Alto Stock Farm, now the campus of Stanford University. The shutters were automatically triggered when the wheels of a cart or the breasts or legs of a horse tripped wires connected to an electromagnetic circuit. For a session on 15 June 1878, the press and a selection of turfmen were invited to witness the process. An accident with a snapping strap was captured on the negatives and shown to the attendees, convincing even the most skeptical witnesses. The news of the success was reported worldwide. Muybridge had images from his motion studies copied in the form of silhouettes onto a disc to be viewed in a machine he had invented, which he called a zoopraxiscope. The device was later regarded as an early movie projector and the process as an intermediate stage towards motion pictures or cinematography. In the 1880s, the University of Pennsylvania sponsored Muybridge's research using banks of cameras to photograph people in a studio, and animals from the Philadelphia Zoo to study their movement. Muybridge produced sequences showing farm, industrial construction and household work, military maneuvers, and everyday activities. In 1887, the photos were published as a massive portfolio with 781 plates comprising 20,000 of the photographs. Muybridge's work contributed substantially to developments in the science of biomechanics and the mechanics of athletics. Some of his books are still published today and are used as references by artists, animators, and students of the animal and human movement. George Eastman was an American entrepreneur who founded the Eastman Kodak Company and helped to bring the photographic use of roll film into the mainstream. Roll film was also the basis for the invention of motion picture film stock in 1888 by the world's first filmmakers Edouard Muybridge and Louis Le Prince, and others like Thomas Edison, the Lumiere brothers, and George Méliès. Kodak was founded by George Eastman and Henry A. Strong on September 4, 1888. During most of the 20th century, Kodak held a dominant position in photographic film. The company's ubiquity was such that its Kodak Moment tagline entered the common lexicon to describe a personal event that deserved to be recorded for posterity. The first model of the Kodak camera appeared in 1888. It took round pictures 6.4 centimeters in diameter, was of the fixed focus type, and carried a roll of film enough for 100 exposures. Its invention practically marked the advent of amateur photography, as before that time both the apparatus and processes were too burdensome to classify photography as recreational. The roll film used in the first model of the Kodak camera had a paper base but was soon superseded by a film with a cellulose base, a practical, transparent, flexible film. The first films had to be loaded into the camera and unloaded in the darkroom, but the film cartridge system with its protecting strip of opaque paper made it possible to load and unload the camera in ordinary light. He coined the advertising slogan, "You press the button, we do the rest," which quickly became popular among customers. In 1889, he offered film stock, and by 1896 became the leading supplier of film stock internationally. He incorporated his company under the name Eastman Kodeman in 1892. As film stock became standardized, refinements in colored film stock continued after his death. Now we'll move into the ornamental fonts. Decorative and display fonts became popular in the 19th century and were used extensively on posters and advertisements. This style of type and lettering could be artistic and eye-catching in a way that wasn't considered previously. William Morris launched the arts and crafts movement and, as part of the experimentation and innovation of the time, developed the Troy typeface. As their name suggests, decorative typefaces should be used for decorative or ornamental purposes. They are not suitable for using in body text. You would have some pretty cross-eyed and sick readers if you forced people to read too much in one of these fonts. They tend to have a very distinct look, for example, a Wild West style, horror, or Christmas. The thing to remember about decorative typefaces is that they are only powerful when their use is limited. If you use them everywhere, their effect diminishes. With the advent of technologies like QFont, Cipher, and Typekit, there is no reason why you couldn't use them as headings on your website. Here is one last example of a modern ornamented font. They're mostly just symbols to break up text in a document, and they're called dingleberries. I hope you've enjoyed this presentation and perhaps even learned something to take back with you. Thank you for watching.